All right, so I wanted to spend a little bit of time before this car goes away and just touch on, why I like this car, why, it's a great platform, why you should consider getting one if you've had Hondas before, if you haven't had the Honda stuff, or if you just like the idea of a practical four-door, obviously sedan, but a fun sedan with a stick shift. It's just a lot of fun to drive and practical and not a whole lot of money. So this car is a 2015 Si. So this one, it's kind of messy in here right now. This one's got that screen. The other ones didn't have that. I think 14 and 15 they started to come with this. So that's a nice touch. But ultimately, the inside of this is actually like a really nice place to be. It's kind of messy down there right now, but um, the double dash up here is super cool, and just a lot of fun. When you're driving, you see like the VTEC meter kick on and stuff, and it's just really like a little touch that just makes this so much more enjoyable as a driver's car. And like I said, it is practical. It's not the most practical, but it's practical enough. We've done a number of road trips in this car, and it's been fine. It's been adequate. Trunk space is good. It's just a pretty decent place to be. I mean, I don't like being in the back seat. I can't even say that I've ridden in the back seat very much in this car, and it's again kind of gross. You can see some paw prints and stuff on that, but um, yeah. So interior is nice. Something that you'll hear people talk about, and you really can't appreciate it until you drive one. Honda basically is a master of sorts when it comes to manual transmissions in cars like these. Until I drove this car, had never really driven what I would call, by comparison, a really good manual transmission. I had a had an '05 S40 T5 Volvo that was, it's a turbo car and tuned up and on Bilsteins and all the rest of it. And it just cars that that make manual transmission sort of like a secondary kind of thing generally aren't great at it. But for a cable shifted, front wheel drive car like this, I mean, holy cow, this clutch and the shifter itself is fantastic. It's easy to drive. Anybody can get in here and drive this thing without issue. It's smooth. The throws are a little long, but still, I mean, it's a really, really, really good transmission, I think. I mean, it is actually the weak point for these cars, though, ultimately, if you start making real power with these. So, if we're talking about just naturally aspirated or like a low boost turbo application or something like that, though, this thing will hold up great. Next thoughts, performance. So if you are the type of person who, again, might think that in the world where everything is 400 horsepower and above, that this thing at its 205 horsepower or whatever is just not going to cut it. You need to drive it. You need to drive this car. You need to understand why this car is special, and it's not because it makes a ton of power. It's because the driver engagement's really good. Even though this is, I believe, an electric power steering system, it's really good. You feel it. You feel a lot, especially with decent tires on it. You know what's going on as you're driving it. Like you know how much traction your tires have. If you've ever done any kind of autocrossing and stuff like that, you're gonna love this car, especially for a front wheel drive application. You're what now under $20,000 you can get these. Mine, I sold it for 18,000 for $18,000 for a fun car that's this practical. Four doors, stick shift, good fuel economy. It's a steal. It's an absolute steal. For my money, if I were to do it again, I would do the same thing. I would absolutely do the same thing. I'd buy this car 100 times over, have no regrets about it, just like what I have now. I have zero regrets about owning this car, driving it every day, modifying it, and just enjoying it. And this is the kind of car that you don't have to try to sell, you know, your wife, your girlfriend, or husband, or boyfriend, or whoever on, right? I mean, it's 4 doors. It's a Civic. It's that's all you have to say. Like, oh, the little SI badge out back or whatever. Oh, it's a like the sporty one or whatever. But at the end of the day, you have one of the most reliable vehicles on the road. So that's another plus in the and I guess in like the evaluations department for this car. So transmission's great, handling's great, driver feedback's really good. The price point, reliability, practicality, it's all there. And it's all there at under $20,000. Now, if you told me that 4 years ago I had the option to get this or the 1.5 liter turbo, I'm still taking this. There's no doubt. People are going to say, oh, well, this isn't a true VTEC car. You have to get the 8th gen for that. I'll tell you, I had an 8th gen. I bought it from a buddy of mine, driven it several times. I eventually sold it. And I'll tell you why I sold it. I sold it because that car is far less refined than this car. And what I mean by that is, if you're going to have just one and you have to drive it every day, you have to live with it, you have to have other people live with it with you, the 8th gen's just not that, in my opinion. In 2021 to the time that I bought this one in 2017, the 8th gen, and I understand it's a dated platform. There's a reason why they moved on. I get that. But you'll find people that say, oh, well, if you want the true car, like the true Civic Si, you want the 8th gen, and fair enough. I get the argument. But they're just not as nice as this. Like, there is nothing about the 8th gen, inside, outside, in my opinion, that looks anywhere close to as good as how this car looks. Not only that, but again, it's more practical. It's just a better looking car. I had an 8th gen coupe, and another thing, again, people will say, oh, the 4-door 8th gen Si is the better looking car, whatever. I mean, fair enough, but still, this is just so much more a sophisticated car in the way that they did the body lines. Just everything about it is just so much more sophisticated and just well done. I think the interior is way better. There is no comparison. The seats, about the same, honestly. Maybe these have a little bit more bolstering, but if they do, not by much. Factory entertainment system, there's no comparison. The 9th gen's better, but I don't want to get too derailed on this. But ultimately, here would be my recommendation. If you're a young person, middle-aged, or you just whatever, you just want to have one of these, this is what I'd recommend you do. My experience with this car, first thing I did was Honda Flash Pro. Second thing I did was a Skunk 2 cold air intake. Third thing actually was a Progress, I think it's a 24 millimeter adjustable sway bar. And then I got the RV6 catted downpipe. Now, with this car, modified the way it was, with the tent and everything else, and it's not lowered, I never did any of that mess. I never got pulled over in this car. It's not obnoxious, it's not ricey, it sounds really good, it's throaty. The sway bar more or less overcomes just about all the understeer issues that you would encounter during just normal street driving, even more spirited street driving. So it tells you, oh, you have to get coilovers, oh, you have to get lowering springs or whatever. Get the adjustable Progress rear sway bar. Get that first and put it on the second setting, the middle setting, and take this on some on-ramps and some off-ramps for the highway. And what you'll find is this car with decent rubber is more than capable of performing how you want it to on ramps and off ramps. Basically, you really don't begin to feel the inadequacies of the factory suspension until you're pushing this car 9 tenths, 10 tenths, all the time. And when I say 9 tenths, 10 tenths, I mean you're pushing this thing to 90 to 100% of its abilities on the street, and you're hearing tires squeal out back. I mean, that's the point where you really start to feel the softness in the front suspension. You start to feel the front end sort of pick up a little bit. When you feel that, and you're hearing tires squeal, and you have to have more out of this car, that's the point where you should say, okay, well, I suppose coilovers and all that, but I never did that. I never really got to a point where I decided it was worth my time to put a turbo on this car, or put a blower on this car, and I had started saving for it and all that kind of stuff, and thinking, oh well, what's the next logical step with this? Okay, well, yeah, we're gonna go forced induction with it, and it just never happened. And the reason why it never happened is because basically, in my opinion, and different folks are going to have different opinions on this, and that's why cars are so fun. My opinion is that you start doing that with this platform, you're quickly going to overcome the traction capabilities of this car. So front wheel drive is, it's fine generally for most people. Good tires and good suspension, what this thing has, from the factory, in my opinion, and you're going to have a lot of fun. Now, even on the mildest of turbo setups, you're easily making 350 the tire. 350 the tire in this car just doesn't make sense to me. And again, this isn't me disrespecting the platform or the people that do that to this car, but you're asking for trouble. And I'm not talking about the engine or the tuning or any of that kind of mess, which, I mean, you are going to have to tune, obviously, and upgrade the fuel system and everything else. But, if you're going to spend $5,000 after you've just spent, let's say you buy this car for $20,000 or whatever, I mean, to me, that just, it just doesn't make sense. And that's, again, I mean, I'm not going to give anybody a hard time for doing that. It's just, you're asking too much of what this was really designed to do, I think. And honestly, I would rather just move to a platform that is designed to handle more from the get-go, and not be in a position where I have to think of all the ways to solve the problems that come along with, messing with a daily driver like this. Like I said, I mean, I've got an old car that gets, all of my sort of like deep tweaking abilities, right? So things that really require me to fabricate maybe, or come up with some, solutions that require me to improvise and figure out how to install stuff to make it work and last and all the rest of it. I'm not going to do that with this car. And that's why I'm getting rid of it. I'm getting rid of it because the benefits versus the potential downsides of having this as a daily driver, when I've already got an old muscle car in there, where I can do all that kind of stuff with, it just doesn't make sense. I need to be able to get to work. I need to be able to have all this, just work like it's supposed to. And, you can make the argument, okay, well, if you do like a Comptech blower, you do a clutch, or if you do like a PRL turbo kit and you do a clutch, and you do all that stuff, it's like, well, yeah, but, you've just spent $4,000, that you're never going to get back. Which, I mean, the car thing, I get it. It's not an asset. It's just a continuous depreciation and just a money pit. But, and again, this isn't me giving anybody a hard time for doing that. By all means, if someone told me today that they want to come pick me up and drive me around in a blown SI, a turbo SI, I mean, I'd be all about it, and I'm sure I'd just go crazy about it. But it just didn't. I didn't reach that conclusion. I decided to go a different path. Now, I will say this: with the cold air intake, with the downpipe, the Cadden one from RV6, Skunk 2 cold air, or like an Acuity Curl cold air, with like the hybrid racing one, I think is another good one, if I'm not mistaken. But that, the downpipe, the tune, and by the way, folks, for all these people out there that are just terrified of learning to tune these things by yourself, it is so easy. Honest to God, it is. Now I say it's easy. I never touched ignition timing on this because I never had access to a dyno. I just street tuned this car, and I just got the mass airflow voltages and stuff correct. Um, I just spent time data logging. The base maps they give you and stuff for the combination I have, they're pretty generous in the sense that they tend to run pretty rich just regardless. So basically, you're in a position where the ignition timing isn't really messed with. The cam angles, they may mess with them a little bit. But basically, if you just run a base map and you pull fuel out like you're supposed to, and you get the cam angles more or less close to where they would put them, just generally, you're going to pick up the power that you want to pick up. You're not going to knock if you do what you're supposed to. Your air fuel is going to be great. Your mileage is going to be great. And I mean, it's easy. Honest to God, it is so easy. So I would urge people, and if you're going to buy a Flash Pro and you're going to start playing around with this stuff and you don't know anything about mass airflow tuning or just ECU tuning at all, I honestly, I cannot think of a more forgiving platform. And again, other people may know more about this, with more experience with the K24, K20 stuff, but man, you're you're not dealing with like a Porsche or a Ferrari or whatever. I mean, this is a Honda. People make way too big of a deal about the tuning stuff, and quite frankly, I think that there's a reason why you do pay professionals. I mean, you have access to their information and to their facilities and all the rest of it. But if you're just doing naturally aspirated, this car naturally aspirated with a tune that handles the fuel really well and gets the cam angles pretty close to where they want to be, you're going to be fine, in my opinion. Of course, that's just butt dyno, but even still, you'll know what it feels like when you get it close, and you won't be knocking. You'll have all your fuel right. I mean, don't be afraid to tune this yourself. Educate yourself first. Hondata actually is a really, really, really good platform. Honestly, it's as capable as a lot of basic aftermarket ECU options. Nothing like, like a Motec or whatever, like a Fast XFI 2.0, but, it's very capable and you can do it yourself. So overall, it's been a good 4 years. This is a really fun car. I got into this not being a Honda guy, growing up a muscle car guy. Still am at heart, I think, a muscle car guy. But with that being said, if you're gonna have just one car and it's gonna be fun, this is a good choice. If you're gonna have two cars, like a classic car that you kind of mess with for a while and drive on the weekends, and this has to work and just kind of get you around, this is a great option. The front wheel drive stuff, I think people tend to make too big of a deal out of it. I mean, don't get me wrong, like there's some irritating stuff about it, but it's got a limited slip. It accelerates pretty well. A lot of it's going to be basically how much of an improvement can you make to yourself driving this, really, is the biggest limitation. So, they dropped off my new car and they didn't pick up this car yet. They're supposed to tell me when they come to pick it up. But anyway, I thought it'd be kind of cool to take time to, just button this whole deal up. I can't recommend this enough. If I had a son who was getting a first car, I'd buy this in a heartbeat. These are just a really, really, really great, they call it like an entry-level sort of sport compact or whatever. And sometimes people try to compare them to GTIs and WRXs and stuff like that. I mean, I don't think that that's really fair, because I don't think that's how Honda has really continued to develop this platform, the Civic Si platform, because I really don't think that comparing an Si to a GTI or WRX out of the box, I mean, that's just not where Honda's at with this. I mean, I don't think. But without a doubt, if you're considering one of these, go drive one. If you're not a Honda person, if you hate on Hondas, you need to go drive one. You need to go understand, what it is about these that's so special, because they are special. They're not a lot of money. There are a ton of them out there, relative to other sort of like special production cars, but wow, it's this thing's never let me down other than normal maintenance and my upgrades and stuff. I mean, I cannot recommend this enough. So that's a wrap. 4 years, 2015 Civic Si. If you buy my car, that'd be kind of cool. Um, but it's in great condition, and I cannot recommend this enough. So that's all I got for you. Have a good night. Bye.